You know. Oh, you get to be recorded now, John, huh? Yeah. I'll let you introduce yourself. I'm sure you have that. John, yeah. Take one up. Please. Thank you.
We're recording.
Take them down.
Well, hello, everybody.
Sorry about that.
So, yeah, I'm John. I'm the director at St. Francis St. Joseph Catholic Worker House. And let's see here, I started there in 2011, about 6 months after I got sober. And I took over the house in January 2013 when my predecessor Carl Fields passed away. So, first and foremost,
You took it over when what?
my predecessor Carl passed away. First and foremost, I just wanted to say thank you. Especially during COVID, St. Michael has really stepped up and helped us out. When other volunteers were dropping away, not contributing anymore because everybody was afraid. St. Michael stepped up and really helped us out through a difficult time and have continued to do so. And I cannot thank you enough. So, tell you a little bit about who we are. As I said, we're St. Francis St. Joseph. We have two names because we actually have two origins. And the first house was the St. Francis house. And that was opened by a guy named Jim Mullen, who was a bartender in Urban Mine. And Jim just kind of got hip to this Catholic worker movement started by Dorothy Day in New York and Peter Morin. And he was real moved by it, so he opened up a house. And wasn't real organized. He just, collected donations, served food, let guys stay there. It was chaotic from everything I've been told, but it was in the spirit of the movement. And while he was doing that, and nobody knows when exactly it started, but our best guess, a guy that was involved in the beginning, he says early 1983. And that first house that was actually started on Main Street. So Jim would end up moving to our current location a few years later. And while he was doing that, Father Mark Schmieder, who is often credited as our founder because he shaped the place and what it is, he started the St. Joseph House of Hospitality over on 13th Street. And he kind of modeled his place after what Jim was doing. He was real impressed with what he was doing. So they ran both these houses for a few years, and then both houses were kind of in trouble. Jim was diagnosed with cancer. This would have been in the late 80s, I think. And he couldn't run the house anymore. So he ends up selling the house to Father Mark, and they merged the two locations to where we are today. Father Mark he organized it. So this is something about our place, being a Catholic worker house, that is kind of atypical of Catholic worker houses, that we are organized. We are 501c3. We have a board of directors. We have a paid staff. It's very unusual for Catholic worker houses, but anyone that's seen a lot of these houses will all tell you the way we run ours is smooth. And a big reason for that, Father Mark understood, there's only so much you can ask of volunteers, but of employees, you can ask a lot more. So we have staff there 24 hours a day. And that's really important because a lot of these guys, being new in sobriety, our mission statement, basically what we do is we create a safe and dignified environment. And one aspect of that is a drug-free and alcohol-free environment. And having staff there all the time ensures that that's the case. So, so safe and dignified environment where they can secure their immediate needs. So ultimately what we are is, never like the word program, but what we do is a guy can stay for 8 weeks. And the goal is get a full-time job, save 65% of your money. By the end of 8 weeks, you should have enough saved for the first month's rent deposit. Sometimes guys need more time than that, and we will give more time than that. We just don't advertise that. I was just talking with Paul. And we like them to have a sense of urgency. We don't want them to kind of take their time, and this is an immediate need. So they go from homeless to house. And another very important aspect of what we do is we have them do it on their own. So there are places that you can go, you can get a case manager, they'll hold your hand through the whole process, they'll find you an apartment, they'll find you a job, they'll drive you to appointments, everything you need. We don't do that. And the reason we don't is because we don't need to. It's important for these guys, I think. It was important for me in the beginning to kind of take ownership of this. It becomes theirs because they do it. and they will value it more if they work for it instead of having it handed to them. So that's another very important aspect of what we do. So we talked about the founding, so our services, we offer shelter for up to 16 men. I've had as many as 18 under our roof. Actually, with COVID shutdowns, we were at 18 when the shutdown started. So we would put a guy on a cot, put another guy on the couch. We would just fit him into where we could. But 16 is when we're at full capacity. So we have 3 floors, 8 beds on the second floor, 8 beds on the third floor. But otherwise, it's a pretty small place, and you know, we make do. So we provide meals. We don't charge for rent. You know, again, there's no expenses that they incur with us. You know, all they have to do is, you know, kind of hold up their end. So the way we confirm that, so we do sit down and do a progress interview once a week. And we'll sit down and go over receipts, pay stubs. You know, the goal is just to make sure that, you know, they're actually kind of like meeting, you know, their part, meeting their benchmark. So again, they're supposed to work and save their money, so we're confirming that they do that. And these generally take 5 or 10 minutes, you know, and again, we do it 1 day a week. Guys will do a chore a couple days a week. They have dishes 1 night a week. Everybody kind of alternates. So they take part in the house. And then we also do a soup kitchen, which right now is going back to back, which is because the weather's getting warm again. And we don't serve hot soup when it's warm. Who we help? Everyone. I've had, you know, aside from just kind of chronic homeless, I've had doctors, lawyers. I had a San Diego Charger. I've had a Cincinnati Red. Quite a mix. Sometimes we have quite a mix right now. And you know, the causes with most of these guys, it's either mental illness or drugs and alcohol. Almost all of them. So our staff, you know, we know what we're doing. We know what we're doing because we've been there. About half the guys who work for it were actually guests at the house at one time. I myself never stayed there. I stayed at a place like Charlie's, where I got sober, and just kind of tell you a little bit about my background. So I started off, you know, I grew up in a healthy home. I had a healthy family life. My parents are still together. There was never any abuse. There was always encouragement. And growing up, I just fell into a bad crowd. Started drinking, using drugs very young. Started dabbling in pain pills when I was in my 20s and was injecting heroin by the time I was in my mid-20s. And that tore me apart. So I'm fortunate that I survived it. And ultimately, kind of looking back on it, as bad as it was, I'm grateful I went through that experience because it did bring me to where I am today. I'm not the kind of person I think that would have sought a spiritual solution without a life or death urgency, without a life or death need. It's just me. So I went through that. God kept me safe. He kept me alive, and he helped me get sober. And it's funny because people look at me now and say, "Man, I can't picture you being a drug addict." It's like, good, you know, 15 years ago, you'd have no doubt. I was the kind of person when I went to my family's house, they had to lock their purses in the bedroom because I was a thief too. So, like I said, I got my start at a place called Charlie's. Charlie's is very similar to the Catholic Workhouse. That name comes up a lot with our place because we are very close. Again, that's where I came from. I actually serve on the board of directors over there. And we have a lot of back and forth. Guys come from Charlie's, they come to us, and then our guys that have serious substance abuse problems, alcoholism specifically, we encourage them to go in that direction versus getting their own apartment right away. So it's good for them to kind of remain in the structured environment. Charlie's is a place where they provide their own meals, they pay rent. The only difference between that and being on their own is they have a curfew, they have roommates, they have accountability. So I stayed there for 2 years. Not everybody stays there that long, but they can stay there as long as they need to. And wow, I really thought this would take longer.
So is part of your staff, you said some of them have had a similar journey as yours, and how does that help or hinder the work that you do in the house?
So they all have. Every guy that works for it is in some stage of recovery. Andy got sober about the same time I did. Robert got sober about the same time we did. Everybody else, I think the shortest period of sobriety is about 2 years amongst my staff. Where it helps us is we've been there. It helps us in running the house because one, guys tell us stories, and we know those stories because we told those stories, and we know a lot when we see one. We drug tested the house, and mostly we do this by observation. So, like, I can't smell. Some of my staff guys have noses like bloodhounds. They can smell alcohol, they can smell marijuana. It's no problem for them. I can't smell anything, but I can usually look at a man and I can tell you what he's doing. Whether it's opiates, benzos, crack, alcohol, there are different signs that I know because I drank, I smoked crack, I shot heroin. I know what all this stuff does to you. Opiates, for example, really constrict pupils and there's no hiding. And when a guy is sober, then he comes in one night high on opiates, like I call it the look. It's something it's immediately obvious. And then we pull them in for a drug test. We offer them an opportunity to, just, tell us the truth. I don't like to just burn drug tests if I don't have to, but we do tests, and it's easy enough to deal with. One thing methamphetamine. Methamphetamine it's been around for a long time, but the meth that is on the streets today is nothing like the meth that people know, like the old biker green, nothing like that. The stuff it's weird, and what it does to guys is scary. And they just, they're in another world, and they behave in very, very strange ways, and they're dangerous. So we have a special with methamphetamine. Those are the hardest ones to detect because there are no physical, when you look at them, you can't see there are no symptoms. The way they talk, they sound fine. There's nothing weird in their movement or anything like that. But then when you listen to what they're saying, you kind of pause, like, wait, what? And I have examples. I'm not going to cite those examples, but I have examples. Really strange stuff. But yeah, I can't really think of any downsides to it, really. Not with what we do, because another thing, it helps us empathize, and that's very important too. Because on the one hand, like, usually my knee-jerk reaction nowadays when a guy goes out and drinks, it's like, what was he thinking? I'm stupid, right? And then after I kind of pulse him, it's like, oh, I know what he was thinking. He wasn't, I understand, I have to remember back to, the early days. And it's difficult to describe if you've never experienced. If you had an addiction like that, it's all you can think about. And what would happen with me is it was like this switch would go off in my brain. And I would stop thinking about it. I would just go to do it. There was no more debate. I wasn't going to torture myself with should I or shouldn't I. I knew what I was going to go do, and I just went and did it. And at Charlie's, a lot of people don't know this about me because I did so well there. I've been there for 2 years. I was a manager. But before I went there, I was there 5 other times in 1 year. And I got kicked out 5 times. And I got kicked out for using. And that was the deal. I broke the rules. So, I was never angry about it. And, when I have to, like put a guy on the street, nobody likes to do that. But I understand the need for it to be done. And again, I've been on the other side of that. I know what it feels like. It's not a great feeling, but that was very important for me because the last time I was at Charlie's, I was in treatment for about 30 days, and then I was out for about 20 more. And it was the first time I got paid. I had cash in my pocket. And I was walking up the street, I was on my way to a meeting, and I just feel that money in my pocket. It was just all into me. You got enough, you can go have some fun. And I was thinking back to, those times I got kicked out. I knew what was going to happen. And it's like, okay, best case scenario. I come crawling back to Charlie's with my tail between my legs, begging for another chance. That's best case. What is also likely is I don't even survive. Or worse, I go back to using it, I just continue using it for 20 more years. And I was at the point really where I was suicidal in my using. So that helped. Those consequences helped. I had my old housemate used to tell me not to deprive a man of his due consequences. It may save his life. And I firmly believe that's true. Any other questions? No?
What happens if somebody does test positive
There has to be
immediately?
immediately, yeah. Yeah, so we
Are there
have,
second chances at any time or?
we'll allow them back down the road, yeah. So it's not like they're banned forever, it's just they have to leave now. So a big reason for this, kind of like what I'm describing, is guys that are new in recovery. you can't avoid it 100%, you know, you go to the grocery store, they sell beer, you know.
Right.
It's good not to walk down the beer aisle, you know, you do what you can, but with drugs especially. This guy, a friend of mine, he was telling me a story. He was clean for about 3 or 4 years, and he was visiting a family down in New Orleans. And he said he was on the bus, and sitting across from him was this homeless guy. And he was just rocked on heroin. You know, obviously homeless, he's just like nodded out, drooling on himself. And he said he's looking at this guy and he was jealous. He was actually like envious because he was like, man, that dude is wasted. And, you know, there's something in this like, man, I want to feel that. This is why we have to keep it out of the house. For guys that are sober, that are trying, we just, you know, we don't want that in their face. Guys will tell you that have been in other shelters, other sober living houses. Unfortunately, there's a lot of drug use goes on inside these places, and a lot of times it's not policed. And it's like dominoes, they start to fall. So either a guy gets out, or you know, he falls in line with everybody else. So that's a big reason that we have to get that out of the house. And then the other reason is just you know, depending on the drug, it's how they react. You know, guys that are drunk, unpredictable. You know, sometimes they like to fight. You know, I for the most part was pretty friendly drunk, but there were nights when I wanted to fight. So, and again, with like methamphetamine, like those guys have to go. With opiates, you know, they're at risk to overdose too. So there's a lot of reasons, and drug addicts also steal. So, you know, part of like the safe big five environment that we offer, you know, is part of that is we try to have a place where a guy can stay and not worry about, you know, his shoes getting stolen off his feet, or his laptop turning up missing, or his phone getting stolen. I guess that sort of thing happens. Our staff guys, 3 of our staff guys have had their phones stolen.
Breathe what?
Our staff guys have had their phones stolen right off the desk. And Andy was the last one. His phone was on the desk. The guy was moving out. He had his bag, and he just walked in the office, grabbed it, walked out the front door. So, and he was the guy that tested positive. So that was our fault. We should have locked the door. But lesson learned. So yeah, it's unfortunate, but the house has to come first. The other guys, their safety has to come first. So that's why it's a necessity. It's unfortunate, and again, we hate doing it.
How do you keep it safe there? I mean, when something happens, or I know avoid, like, don't let it in, get it out, right? For the drugs, but stuff happens, how do you?
So fortunately, not a lot happens at our place. Now, a big reason for that.
I've always felt safe there.
Yeah, a big reason for that, honestly, is that we can be a little more selective in who we bring in, and that's a big part of it. I'll use Shelter House, for example, and I'm not knocking Shelter House. It is what they do is really necessary. A guy with schizophrenia and drug addiction needs a place to stay in the coldest winter months, right? And the driving center offers that, but. You know, if I had a guy stay there recently that came to my shelter, and he said he was laying in bed and the guy in the bed next to him was sitting up all night for all night. He did not feel safe. Imagine that. We filter for some of that. I mean, we bring guys in handling. You know, depression, bipolar, anxiety disorders, that's not a big deal to us. But if we start getting into like schizophrenia, this is beyond our expertise. This is, we don't have the personnel, we don't have the education, we can't help them with what they need. And, you know, our mission again is, this comes out, guys have to be like able to work. Say they want to find a place to live, and, you know, a guy with schizophrenia, he can't do that, you know, so we're just not, and now I'll help those guys try to get somewhere. But, you know, they can't necessarily come with us. There are guys too, we have what are called red stars. So we bring a guy into the house and we determine that he's not a good fit. And that's a very polite way of saying, do not let him back in the house. I got a phone call actually from a guy. He hasn't been with us in 10 years, but as soon as I heard his name, I told Andy, absolutely not. And I know this guy, and I know his brother, and they're both vital. So myself and my staff, we're really good about, you know, defusing situations. I had a guy years ago. We had to discharge. He came back, he was using, and we drug tested him, he failed. He insisted that I was lying or I was faking the test, whatever it was. And I took him out Tuesday to pack up. We had to escort him. You know, just want to make sure that he packs his stuff up and not his roommate's stuff. And that's important. And the whole time he's just like berating me. call me a sorry excuse for a Christian, call me a, fake sober, call me, And I wouldn't even respond to him. I stood there, I was just looking at the ceiling, I was waiting for him. As long as he was packing, we didn't have a problem. And we got him out the front door. And another trick we use, if it's one of my staff guys has to discharge somebody and they start to get agitated, believe me, I'm not there. They can get mad at me. They can come talk to me, but usually by the time they come back and talk to me, they'll call the next day. They've cooled down. So we have these kind of like these little tricks to help get a guy out the front door without issue. And really, it's rare. We have only a handful of situations like that a year where we have to kind of work to get a guy out. We did have to. We'll have the police remove guys sometimes if we have to, because if a guy refuses to leave, like I'm not going to put my hands on him. I'm not going to force him to leave. It's just if he refuses, that's fine. We call District 1. They'll come. They'll remove him. It's you can leave voluntarily or not. It's up to you. So, and we did have to do that recently, but the guy wasn't violent. He was just, I'm not going. Okay. So, we try to keep that to a minimum. We try to be good neighbors. One thing about our shelter too is a question we get a lot is, have you gotten offers on the building? We have a lot of gentrification in our area. And I was telling Paul, for example, Grammar's across the street. They're now talking about knocking that down and building a block size monstrosity right across the street from us. And I am not thrilled about that. So.
You've mentioned Paul twice so far. Could you clarify your relationship with Paul for everybody here in the room?
Absolutely. Paul has recently joined our board of directors. He's going to be helping out with the spiritual matters of the house. We've always had, at least some clergy available. And we've not had that in a few years, and we're grateful to have Paul kind of help us out with individual stuff. That's something that's been lacking. So, myself, my staff guys, we can work with guys on a very superficial level. From a recovery standpoint, all of us are pretty well versed in 12-step recovery. I'm the only real Catholic there. And if guys are open to engage, I'll talk about faith with them, absolutely. But we're not qualified counselors, we're not therapists, we're not psychiatrists, and we need to remember that. So I can kind of cover my experience with somebody, but I don't like to direct them spiritually because it's a little above my pay grade. And it's good to have somebody back, somebody in there now that can kind of do that. So that was a big help to us. It was her name is Sister Kay, and she's not been with us for a lot of years. She's still alive, but she's just in her age, just kind of slipped into dementia. So pray for her. She needs it. And but she used to sit down with guys. And one thing that was good about that was her conversations with the guests would not be shared with staff. That was a very important part of this. Is there anything that was? And then she could actually help. If a guy comes in, he's butting heads with staff and we're having some problems. She had this magic ability to just sort of explain things in a way when he comes out, he sees in a whole different perspective. And then there's no hostility, and then we're not kind of arguing back and forth. They understand we're not trying to get anything out of you. We don't take money. There's nothing we gain other than the spiritual high of actually getting a guy out there and seeing him succeed. But that's all we get. And sometimes guys are just they've been on the streets for a long time and they don't trust people. They don't trust any authority. And,
when you kick them out, if you have to kick them out, what happens to the money that you've already collected?
we don't collect money.
What?
We don't collect money.
They have to give 65% of their.
They have to save 65%.
Save it.
So the way we confirm that is just they just have to document. So guys nowadays mostly have apps, they'll just pull it up, like here's my balance, here's my okay, good enough. We never handle the money. And that's
so smart.
It's very important. So, aside from occasionally Annie or I will give a guy a couple dollars to get on the bus, if he's new, but I had found out there was a staff guy years ago that was borrowing money from guys, and it wasn't huge amounts or anything, but it was I didn't fire him over it, but we talked, and that didn't happen again. It's unprofessional for one. And it's just a conflict of interest. We have to be careful too, like restaurant guys, for example. They come in late, everybody else is asleep, they'll bring in extra food for staff. And that's all fine and good. He gets a ride and it's like, hey man, I've been giving you dinner. It's like, why don't you help me out? So that's why we always have to be careful with stuff like this. Some of these guys are real savvy. Some of these guys, you know, they've spent a lot of years in prison, they know how to work COs, and we have to kind of be on guard for that, so. Sometimes it's innocent enough, you know, but we have to be careful. Yeah.
How does a person get referred to you, or how do you identify people that end up living?
Okay, well, they come from a lot of different places. One of them is what's called the Cap Line. So if you're not familiar, the Cap Line is a phone number you call if you're homeless in Cincinnati. And it's 381-SAFE. And Cap Line is, they're actually a branch of what's called Strategies to End Homelessness. And Strategies to End Homelessness is the continuing care for Henry County. So the county has hired them to monitor homelessness in Henry. And their office, basically, they can do referrals to various shelters. So men, women, children, whatever it is, they can call this number and at least try to get them directed to. It doesn't mean they'll place you. And I always have to warn people that you're gonna be on hold for a very long time. You know, it's usually 30 minutes at a minimum, sometimes an hour. But you know, it's just they only have a few people and they get a lot of calls. So and it's gonna get real bad too, because winter shelter is getting ready to close, and we're starting to get like a lot more calls. I filled 5 beds today. So yeah, we're just about back to full. So we get referrals from there, we get referrals from Charlie's. You know, guys show up to Charlie's, hey, I'm interested in the bed. Well, I don't have anything, but I got a place, a really good place you can go to, because Andy will do this. Andy, not my Andy, this is Andy at Charlie's. He'll have a guy that's a good candidate for Charlie's, but there's no room for him. So they'll send him down to our place, you know, because it's a safe place. They know that he can get to work, get a little money away, and then when he gets an opening, we can move him back up there. And so we do try to help out with that, especially for guys in early recovery. It's trying to keep them in a safe environment. So we get referrals from, we get walk-ins, we get 211 referrals for us. Word of mouth in the recovery community, 12-step recovery AA meetings, NA meetings were known. So referrals through there to people we know from recovery. You know, hey, I got a new sponsee, needs a place to go. So they kind of come from all over.
And as far as helping them to get employment, how involved are you with that?
So what I like to do is the same thing with housing. I have one of my guys, one of the younger guys we've had is 19, and I sat down with them for about an hour yesterday. We went over, I showed him how, like, when I'm looking for an apartment, here's what I do. And I showed him some different, you know, I write Craigslist, you know, I showed him how to budget, you know, this is what you can afford, let's figure out what part of town. And then I just kind of set them loose, you know, now you got phone calls to make. It's kind of the same thing with the job. There are places we can recommend. Sometimes there'll be kind of a hotspot that's hiring people. One problem that we have is when we send too many guys, most of them don't work out, and then those places will stop hiring guys from our shelter. So I usually encourage them not to use our address, because if they see our address, they'll just immediately like, no, we're not gonna deal with this. This happened to us with Hope and Donuts. We had they kept hiring guys from the house, and these guys 2, 3, 4 days, and they were gone. To be fair, it was a hard job. It was low pay, and the shift started at 1 a.m. So
Yeah.
yeah, they had a hard time keeping employees, but no, you know, I mean, I'll sit down with the guy, I'll make recommendations, I'll try to show him, but ultimately it's important for them to do that. When I'm screening a guy on the phone too, I can get a feel sometimes for a guy that's not interested in like doing anything. You know, he's kind of like, there are questions they'll ask. You all find his house. You know, and what that means is like, I don't want to do anything, I just want to go there and get me. You know, and that's fine. I'll recommend them to places that do that, but I won't bring them anymore.
So you give them a time period, they come in without a job, do you give them like a 2 weeks?
Now, like anything else, you know, we reserve the right to modify that if we need to. So we had a guy recently who had been incarcerated for a very long time, and he was struggling. He had a murder conviction. He was having a hard time finding a job. So, but he was looking, you know, because he's got his folder, he's got all his copies. He was obviously like he's trying. So we let it ride. You know, we let that go a little further, because you know we always want to reward effort. You know, if a guy's really doing what he has to. I don't want to have just this like, you know, rigid tyrannical policy that is, you know, kind of squeezing guys out that are really trying. There's another guy too, kind of the same thing. He had a history of being in prison, and again, we were seeing a lot of effort with him, and it was not effort that we expected. So again, we extended him out further until he got a job, and weird how that ended. He got hit by a car. Yeah, this was years back. I totally forgot about this, James. I still have one of his sticks in my office, but got hit by a car, broke his back, and then ended up he was in nursing care for a long time. I actually brought him back for a short period of time until he got into another nursing home, but he couldn't work that. But yeah, it's one area of difference between myself and my predecessor, Carl. He stuck to the policy to a T. And his philosophy was basically the policy doesn't discriminate. The policy doesn't play favorites. Everybody is playing by the same set of rules. And he's not wrong. But we are not identical. And I come from a different school where, we have to kind of approach guys differently, depending on the need. Some guys you can be like a running mule and that's what it takes to get them to respond. Other guys, you have to have a real soft touch, and it depends on the man. So I don't like get locked down by a policy. The policy is the primary guideline, that we use, but I like to have a little wiggle room if it calls for it. Yeah.
Do you like refer them to like different places that might help them to address their barriers to employment, like legal aid, mental health?
Legal aid is guys have child support, and usually that child support is based off an older income that was much higher than what they're getting now. So yeah, that's a good place to send them to try to get that reduced and a little more fair. Addiction Services Council, which offers counseling, mental health counseling, and they just need Medicaid. They have that available. We can send them there. So I treat this as kind of like an outside issue, but if I see a guy struggling, he needs something like that, we'll recommend it. I won't mandate it, but we'll recommend it. And yeah, and then there's meetings. So, we have some of these guys do AA and some of my employees do AA, so they will take those guys to meetings kind of outside,
They have to do the 12-step or
they used to. That was something that with COVID, the meetings got stopped during COVID, and I noticed that there's not really a difference in our level of success. And the other thing is too, is not everybody that's in our group is an alcoholic or addict. So forcing those guys into AA meetings seemed kind of counterproductive. And the meetings that we had at the house weren't always fruitful. It just turned into them complaining about staff. So, yeah. So we have so many AA meetings locally. Charlie's alone, which is a 10-minute walk, they have 2 meetings a day. St. X does a daily meeting. Oak Street has meetings all day long, but again, that's within walking distance. So guys that want to do 12-step recovery, like there's nothing stopping them. So.
I think it's helpful, but I think you gotta, some people are turned off by the religious aspects of it.
I understand it. I did AA for 8 years and I don't do it now. So
I think it's a great program.
No, it helped me tremendously. I worked with a sponsorship group that was real diligent. I went through the 12 steps 3 times. I completed the men's all 3 times. And if you know anything about recovery, most people don't do that. So, but I had a sponsor that insisted on it. And he's the guy I still talk to today. Real good man.
Do you find that the residents help each other in certain cases, or
Yeah.
kind of like brothers? Or
That's always nice to see. So, kind of the default of the house, it's a bit of an every man for himself. And most of that is just kind of the short-term nature of what we do. But you do see guys kind of group up. Sometimes that's good, and sometimes that's not good. Andy and I have both numerous times brought a guy into an office and kind of like encouraged him to maybe not run with this guy. We know this guy's a history. He's probably not doing anything good in this.
It's like being a parent.
Well, and Andy too, because you met Andy, he is hyper intuitive. He's an empath and he can really read people. And there's some guys he gets that vibe, like something's off with this guy, and he's never wrong. So
You gotta have, huh?
It's a good guy to have. It's bad for him.
Yeah.
It's anybody that knows someone like my wife is like that too, and it's some people call it a superpower, he calls it a curse. But, it's useful to me. So and yeah, but sometimes we'll group up and we'll have a guy comes in, he's got a job. Well, hey, they're looking for four other people. And so we'll see this sometimes where a group of guys will all be working in the same place, they'll all be working together.
That's good.
And sometimes they come there in groups too. But usually that's never any more than two. So,
What are how do you keep the morale up? What are your most stressful points? I mean, those are tough questions, right? I feel like I'm in a corporation,
well,
but, what do you do for people? I don't mean that, but you get where I'm going, right? Because I'm sure there's some days as a team, you guys are just like,
Yeah.
I'm done.
Andy remedies that by going on long vacations. I kind of do the same. The main thing is we want to try to keep from becoming jaded. And that's an easy thing to do in this field. And you see this happen in a lot of places where you will actually start to hate the guys you're working with. And this has happened to me. I will get into a funk, and it's not that I wish ill will towards them, but I get to a point where it's just like, what is the point? And this will happen after we have a lot of failure, especially guys that we have expectations for. And we get kind of burned on that. And it's my fault. I have an expectation in the first place, but it's hard not to. Some guys you're really rooting for. And then they screw up and it's just like, here we go. Other guys, another thing we really don't like is when we find out a guy's really been lying to us. And I'm not hurt so much that he got over. It's just, again, it's just kind of a nasty feeling. Main thing is, they say the average life of a social worker is 5 years. And I've been doing this now for over 13.
Wow.
13. And a big reason for that, one, I think, is just my natural temperament. I'm not easily affected by these kind of things. It takes a lot to really wear me down. But it does happen, and my solution is always God. I dive back into prayer, I dive back into meditation, and always what comes back to me is what this is about. And this is about helping people. There are no strings attached. It's not about the results. So that's a big thing for me that I need to remember is I may want good things, but that may not be their path. And I've done this to people. I've been on the flip side of this too, especially my family. I put them through hell. How many times I told my mother this time is going to be different. My sister told me one time, that she can no longer afford to invest any more emotion in me. And if I came to her house, she would call the police. That relationship today, by the way, is entirely repaired, but it took a long time.
Do any of your staff members have degrees in like social work or anything like that?
So Andy was a CDCA, a licensed CDCA for a while. That's not like a major education, something you can do in 16 to 20 weeks, I think. He does not keep up with that anymore because we don't use it. So again, we're not counselors. We don't try to counsel because we don't have that degree. And it's not our place to do that. And then I go back to, again, like Addiction Services Council, they have real counselors. So it's better for us to do one thing well than many bad. If there are others that are offering professional services and they're doing so at their own expense, not ours, we may as well use it.
It seems like the best education is a life education.
Life experience, yeah. So it's definitely useful in this line of work. It's working with these guys. It gives us better understanding of them. And again, that's thankfully the part of my life is over. So I have the experience now, and I shouldn't have to go through that again, God willing. So very important to maintain, the spiritual health so that I don't end up back there, because I don't want to ever pretend like I've got the same legs, because I've known guys. I have a sponsored brother who had 12 and a half years and relapsed. So not Catholic too. So, that's it can happen. He wasn't careful. And he admitted, he said, I was dishonest about some things. He had a girlfriend, he was talking to other women, and he was not talking to anybody else about that. He was not telling his sponsor what he was doing, and he got him. So, yeah.
You talked about St. Mike's being involved in your group that we really helped. I'm not sure that everybody here knows the different ways that we have done things over the years.
Oh, yeah. Well, dinners, which we get every week, we get sandwiches, just about every week. These things are a huge help to us. The sandwiches, well, and the meals, it's not just the financial expense, it's the time. One thing we do to kind of keep expenses down is I have one person on duty. Aside from the fact when Andy and I were together, but I'm salary, so it doesn't matter when I'm there or not. But the main thing is, it's hard to do. It's like to put all this stuff together by ourselves and then answer the phone and then deal with interviews. And like today, I took, I think, 400 phone calls. And while doing 5 I mean, it's and if I had to make sandwiches.
And unpack two people's cars.
Yeah.
That delivers stuff to you.
It's funny because every time I'm walking out the door, my wife laughs because, I tell her, all right, I'm walking out the door right now. Then she calls back 5 minutes later and it's like, I'm walking out the door. I swear. So, yeah, eventually I make.
I am, I'm just talking to somebody as I'm doing this.
One of the things we passed around was a list of smalls. Some people are able to commit to making a meal once a month. Some are able to commit to making some bologna sandwiches, whether it's on routine or maybe once a quarter, something like that within our rotation. Some people just say, what can I bring every once in a while to a meeting when we meet or that I can drop off? So here's their list, their wish list that I gave you guys that pretty much at any time they could like you don't need to buy them a case of coffee. Can of coffee's fine, right? Just right. And then every once in a while they'll say, hey, we're really low on this. Hail Mary, what do you got? But very rare. There's the wish list there.
No, we're kept in pretty good shape. Jane and I usually tell you if if we're getting low on cereal, like coffee right now, we're in pretty good shape. And the thing is with stuff like that is it will get used. So even if I have a lot of it, it will get used. Coffee right now, we're going into the summer months, so we won't go through it as fast. Cereal we will. Another thing I've been kind of pushing is all of our bread runners. We have about 1 or 2 bread runners come a month now. And if you're not familiar, the bread runners operate out of St. Vincent Fair. And what they would do is they would go to like Buskin's, Kroger, Dunkin', and they would collect all the food that was past the sell-by date but still good to eat. And they would go and they would distribute those to the various shelters. So we used to get 3 of these a week. We would have boxes of donuts all the time, and those have just dried up. Kroger, especially from what they tell me, Kroger has gotten much better about tackling their inventory, so they just have a lot less waste. And when they have just a handful of things, they don't bother coming down. So snacks, sweets, the individual chip bags are great. Little items like that, things they can kind of grab on the go or snack on when they're in the house. That stuff is really, really helpful. And that's something that we have a real big need for right now. So we're starting to get some of that stuff coming in, but you guys are shaking. So
I know we bring meals down on the weekends, but how are your dinner meals done during the week?
we're in good shape as far as dinners go. So every Monday is covered. Yeah, every Monday is covered. Every Tuesday is covered. 3 out of 4 of my Wednesdays are covered. Just about every Thursday is covered. Fridays, I have a lady that she buys pizza on Fridays. So Fridays is La Rosa's. I have you guys do all the Saturdays and now half the Sundays, I think.
Mostly Saturdays.
Mostly
Nobody do any
Saturdays.
Sunday.
They used to do something.
Yeah, we used to do Sunday.
Okay, that's what we do. And I now have one of my old groups.
You probably have leftovers on Sunday from us.
Sometimes we do. You'll be surprised though. We have, even if we have a handful of guys, one of my guys, Sam. Sam is about this tall. He's from Somalia.
Oh.
And he can eat more food than 4 I kid you, he would get these plates that were spilling over and he would eat the entire thing, practically lick the plate, get it a second sit down, eat the whole, and go for thirds, like, it's mind boggling watching how much that kid could eat. So, and then we had another guy, Kevin, he was a big guy, we used to call him Big Hungry, and he was the same type. He
Big
could eat
Hungry.
he could eat 3 or 4 plates. Yeah. Kevin ended up going to prison, and ironically enough, it's kind of funny because he broke into a house so that he could get into the fridge and he fixed himself some food, and that's aggravated burglary, you know, he ended up going to prison for that, but Kevin was hungry.
Oh, man.
Are there food items and meals that people are not particularly fond of?
So with food items, the only thing I usually discourage is pork, and only because we from time to time we have guys that don't eat it. Sometimes, you know, it's a religious thing. Other guys, it's not uncommon amongst black men, they just don't eat pork. And I had that with a couple of my employees in recent years too. They were kind of the same way. So pork, and then nobody ever like cooks like shellfish, but things like that has, you know, potentially high.
You know, we went down there once to do shrimp Alfredo. I thought it was a big deal. Man, we were running to Kroger's to get chicken for chicken Alfredo on the fly, because everybody's like, I don't eat
Well,
shrimp.
Bobby-
I don't eat shrimp.
Bobby used to do a shrimp pasta. He only did it every once in a while because it was really expensive to put together. But
I know, I thought it was a big treat.
we've done it. Yeah. No, as a rule, yeah, pork and like anything that has high potential to be an allergen, we stay away from. But most everything else is fine. So.
But bacon's not pork, right? Just clarifying.
Neither is pepperoni.
Bacon is not pork,
Yeah.
right?
We've noticed that it's quietly, we called him a part-time Muslim, but he did not eat pork unless it was La Rosa's and it was sausage and pepper.
Oh.
Really?
There you go.
We had some boys in our Boy Scout troop who were Muslim, and yeah, they were at pizza at La Rosa's or whatever, getting pizzas, and my husband was buying cheese pizzas for them and stuff. Can we eat this? And he goes, looks at their dad and goes, hey, their mom's the one that tells them what they can and can't eat, not me.
Yeah, anytime we order pizza.
He said, I don't eat meat because it's a health issue for me, not religion.
No, every time we order pizza, I order 1 cheese pizza just in
Yeah.
case, but the rest of it is just meat.
What about like pork barbecue? I mean, do they?
Yeah, some people will make that. St. Andrews, they drop off once a month, and sometimes they do like pulled pork. It's fine every once in a while because again, you know, if I have a guy that doesn't eat pork, you know, we can make him something else. You know, it's not a huge deal. It's and it's rare that I have more than like 1 or 2 at a time. So I can think of, I can count on one hand how many times I've had, you know, 3 or 4 guys at once. So
But I like casserole's okay, because I'm thinking about making chicken bacon ranch casserole this time.
that stuff is great. Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, it's not difficult to make. It's my, you know, my thing is like, I would cook the kind of stuff that I would eat. So if I would eat it, then I would serve it. If I wouldn't eat it, then I wouldn't serve it. So,
Now that's a recipe that my niece uses when they cook for, they have a meal ministry at their church.
Yeah.
And she said, you can sneak broccoli in if you know, grind it up enough, it only
Into a
colors it a
fine
little bit
powder.
green, yeah. And that way they do get a vegetable, so to speak, but not, you know, tastes like, tastes like ranch dressing and bacon, who's not gonna eat it?
Well,
you know?
and actually vegetables, these guys mostly eat vegetables. It's not been a problem either. We we usually serve a salad if we get, like, if I get pizza, we'll serve a salad with it. You know, most of the casseroles that we get have, you know, vegetables or mushrooms. Mike Hazard, for example, he does that beef stew, he puts mushrooms in it. No one complains, so. Yeah.
Some of the things that I've heard other people here do, or myself, so I'll just kind of share it around here. Is they work with Girl Scout troops
Yes.
to make bologna sandwiches. So it's a way that we can take our ministry to another area to help them be involved. I took it with my great niece's group and we were making them up in Waynesville. And there was a dad there that said, oh, is this for the shelter in Lebanon? And I'm like, no. And he goes, oh, because I was from there. He goes, I was homeless and I was there. I worked with them and I lived there for about 4 months. I've had mental illness. And he just started testifying right there, and these kids' eyes were just wide open. They're like 8, 9 years old, and they were just wide open that one of their other Girl Scouts' dad had this life. You know, so that just that our ministry can give in other ways than this. I know that a lot of you guys work with other folks to say, hey, we have a need here, can you do this? Or people will contact you, like, oh my gosh, I have a leftover casserole, it's a whole one, we've never used it, can you take it down there? The answer is yes, as long as you know the origin and it's safe and you would eat it, then yes. If it comes from us, it's safe going into their house.
Yeah, we
So-
get, people will occasionally just drop off food at our doorstep and it looks fine, but like I said, I wouldn't eat it, I'm not
If you
gonna.
don't know
start
the
it.
origin, you don't eat it.
So, yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
if we know its origin, absolutely, you know, and sometimes even if it's like, if I can't cook it for dinner, these guys eat several times a day.
Yeah.
And a lot of what they do eat is leftovers, you know, if there's leftovers, they'll dive into that, and you know, if we have an extra tray of something, they eat it, so.
We do in this room, actually, on Thursday nights through Lent. It's the RCIA, now called OCIA meeting, and it's 3 parishes that meet here. There's maybe about 30 adults that go through it. And we're making bologna sandwiches through Lent. It's what, our 3rd year doing it, maybe? We delivered 60 a week, you know, not a lot, but 60 a week, and it goes, they have fun doing it, and they're proud of the work that they're doing, and hopefully it'll just, we tell them about what Catholic Workers does, but it's just a way to get other people involved outside of yourself.
Or aware.
Yeah, aware
Yeah.
that there's other folks down there that, yeah.
Yeah, and sometimes I had a family, a woman from my parish, she would come down with her 4 kids, and her oldest was about 13, her youngest was about 3. The youngest was Edie, she was the cutest thing you ever saw. And she would hand the lunch out, and she'd turn and go, I did it. It just melted your heart. That's
So
something.
you had her work in the window?
Yeah,
Yeah.
so, and she wanted her kids to have that experience, so she would bring them down. And I have like fathers and sons come down and they'll serve food together, so they don't even have to bring anything if they just want to serve a meal. We have openings still on Tuesdays and Thursdays, Saturdays are pretty full. But Tuesdays and Thursdays, if it's something they ever want to experience, it's especially good for teenage boys.
Yeah.
They need to see, you know, what, this is what drugs and alcohol do to you, you know, like,
Yeah.
you're not careful.
Tell me more about the window.
The window, it's literally a window we open and we serve food out of, so, this is bag lunches.
Oh,
And then we do,
What are the hours for?
11 to 1, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, so.
John, how many do you have average a week at giving out to the students?
people come?
It varies, anywhere between, you know, 40 and 90 a day. And we do that 3 days a week and every week, so, yeah, it adds up. So, yeah, we do soup in the cold months. We just stopped serving soup for the winter. So now we just do veg lunches. And we have a lot of regulars. We know who these guys are. Not all of them are homeless. Some of them, most of them are, but not all. Some of them are just working for us. You know, they come by to get.
They need a lunch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They like bologna, yeah.
I understand.
But I remember we were there, I was there with my great niece once, and there was a lady that was very professional,
Mhm.
you know, but you never know what they've been through, you know, and where they're going and how they're trying to make things work for themselves, you know? Yeah. So,
Yeah.
we try to eat bologna sandwiches when we make them for Catholic Worker House. We always eat what we make for you guys, we eat it ourselves for them.
Quality control.
Yeah. If you're not gonna eat it yourself, don't serve it.
Whenever we deliver the food, I always identify where it's coming from,
Yeah.
St. Michael's, and I'm sure you like that.
Yeah, we usually expect it, so, it's not often that we get, just random meals donated to us, like I said, it happens every once in a while, again, it's usually like.
Oh, it's, you have this schedule.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, yeah, and then we have, some people, Venice on Vine used to contribute a lot of food.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
They would send pizza at like 1 o'clock in the morning. Okay. Sister Judy pulls up in a van and it's like, all right, just don't hurt me. I'm afraid of it.
They closed though recently, didn't they?
Yes.
Yeah.
Mhm.
My husband and I used to manage St. Pat's Knights Columbus Hall in Carthage.
Yeah.
And so we'd have wedding receptions and they invariably, there's one time they had 2 trays of these chicken breasts left over. It just been in the warmer, they hadn't done anything. It's like, up, down to the firehouse we went, the guys were like, oh my God, they just went on a call. They are gonna be so happy when they get back.
Any other questions or best practices that you guys want to share or talk about that you've done or?
You have one?
I'm just curious of what in terms of, giving things or what you need, is socks and underwear still a big need?
It's coming off of Christmas, we still have a good stock of it, so
Okay,
I say give it a couple more months and we'll start. We're not gonna turn it down. I have a place to keep it, and again, it will get used, so.
I know there was another fraternity that for a while at least was providing a lot of paper goods.
Yeah.
Are they still doing that or is that, okay?
Yeah, they come by about once a month, John and David.
Mhm.
That's good.
The
I think
St.
we
Margaret
saw them last
fraternity.
time we were there.
Fraternity
They were
does that.
Great big pickup truck full of.
Yeah.
Yeah, we saw them.
Wow. That St. Margaret fraternity does that.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Another Franciscan.
Yeah.
Nice, nice.
do you take, you got a regular staff, for coverage, night to night, but do you also, welcome volunteers to come to help out?
Well, so for help with like the window, yes, for like the day-to-day operations, not really.
Okay.
It's most of what we do there with the guests is just, we're just monitors. We kind of leave them to come do their thing and we're there to make sure, rules get followed and, again, guys aren't drinking or using or bring girls in the house or whatever it is. So, and the thing is too, is like with cleaning, the guys in the house do the cleaning, so we don't often have. We would get big groups from the Homeless Coalition. They get students from all over the country and there'd be these huge groups. And I finally told them like, they can come, but I cannot keep them busy.
Yeah.
Every once in a while, we did have this kitchen bowler. This is a funny story. They needed something to do and I had one of those old deep freezes that had been broken for years. And I was trying to get out of the basement, but it was too big. So brought the boys downstairs, I said, I have a job for you. I gave one of them a sledgehammer and I said, make that smaller. I go back upstairs and bang, bang, and they
You made their day.
they had the time of their lives. But that sort of thing is a rarity. I don't have, a lot to do otherwise. So with volunteer efforts, it's one of the difficulties I have is I don't have like either dinners or providing sandwiches. Those are the main volunteer things that I have unless you have like a special skill. If you service HVAC units, come talk to me after the meeting. And I even have, I have a few guys that I go to for that. One of the guys from my parish, he was just out of the house last Saturday, installing ceiling fans. He doesn't charge me anything. And he replaced our kitchen floor and tore down the studs, replaced it, bought the materials and charged us nothing. It's a $10,000 job. He is just a relentlessly positive, happy Christian. So that's
You guys remember.
Yeah.
I'd like to, get a picture. You guys all don't mind if you're done. Is that okay? Look at, it's your hair, John.
They had that like, that mist.
Come on, who all wants to stand up here, John? Come. You wanna come? Yeah, group picture, please. Yes. No. What?
If John came this way, would it be easier when we?
Yeah.
And then.
It would.
Yes, yes.
Which way?
You seem to have a vision.
Well, you stand there to take a picture and
Got
John
it.
comes down here at the end.
Okay,
How's that?
I'm gonna turn off the recorder.
okay,
Maybe move the
Thanks.
tripod.
I'll move the tripod out of the way.
Maybe. There's probably no more than there.